Welcome to a new series. It's called Conspiracy Theories, where we look at conspiracy theories, do our research, see if they're true, if they're not, look at the evidence, and yeah. So this time it's the Titanic versus the Olympic. Remember the Titanic sank? Yeah, some people say it didn't sink. The Olympic did, and they say they switched the White Star Lines, switched the ships, so they could get insurance. It was an insurance fraud scam that just went wrong. Let's see how much truth the theory actually holds. So here's the intro. The Titanic sank in 1912, right? Many conspiracy theorists claim that the ships were switched and the Olympic sank and not the Titanic. Let's take a closer look at this conspiracy theory and see how much truth it holds. The backstory. White Star Lines had a big four of ships. Big four of ships were the best ships they had. These ships were the company's best ships and were the most lavish ships the company had. The White Star Line had a big problem coming right at them. These ships were starting to get old and weren't as good as their competitors' ships. So you might say, what's the problem with that? White Star Lines was a premium company and had to compete for the title for the fastest ship. They were competing like Koenigsegg and Bugatti. Both companies don't have to make cars faster than the competition, but they do because it will get them more customers and recognition. White Star Line needed the recognition and more customers, but customers had no reason to travel on White Star Lines. Ships, first class passengers need to save time, which White Star Line ships weren't doing by being slow, and third class passengers also wanted just to get to their destination, right? So they didn't care about the lavish ships. They didn't want to be in the horrible conditions for so long. Third class passengers were in the worst conditions and they didn't want to be there for long. Most passengers would go on other ships and save time since the tickets were mostly the same price. White Star Line was losing customers fast. They needed a solution to their problem as soon as possible. What was their solution, you might ask? White Star Line chose to build new ships which would compete and possibly the fastest ships. These ships were called the Olympic class ships. The ships they were commissioned were the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. If these ships weren't the fastest, then they would surely be the second fastest class of ships in the world. Now the conspiracy theory starts. The Olympic was the first ship to be finished since the entire class was after its name. On its fifth voyage, which was not its maiden voyage because they hadn't done it yet for some reason, the Olympic and the Hawk met, and the Olympic made an unexpected turn, which made the two ships crash. The Olympic was badly damaged when taken to port. The real conspiracy begins here. Please take everything said from now on with a huge grain of salt. So I will just show you all the evidence at the end, show you why it might be false, why it might be true. But just chill. Whatever is said from now on until I tell you, please take it with a grain of salt because this is coming from conspiracy theorists. So just please, okay. Conspiracy theorists claim that White Star Line knew that they would be held responsible for the damage and they wouldn't be able to claim insurance for the Olympic. So they switched the ship with the Titanic, which was going on its maiden voyage. They would damage the ship and get the money from the insurance and have enough money to pay for the damage. So what they're saying is they switched the ships since the Olympic was badly damaged. They would just have some problem with it, so they can claim insurance and have money to fix the Olympic while still having the Titanic. So, what is the evidence for all this? So, some conspiracy theories don't have any evidence, but this has some. And there's some evidence that this theory is true. The portholes on the Olympic look more even than they looked on the Titanic. Now, I'll just show you evidence for that. Here's the Olympic. As you can see, the portholes are like not that even as you can see like that. Well, they're pretty even as you can see. Now, look at this. They're less even, right? These look even. These look less even. Now, on its maiden voyage, look, they don't look as even as they look more even than they did before that, which means the portholes could have been switched. On the Titanic's maiden voyage, the portholes looked just as even as the Olympics. The hull of the Titanic broke, which shouldn't have happened. The hull would have survived unless it had been weakened by something. The hull could have only been weakened if the ship hit something that lines up with the Titanic and the Hawk crashing. There's more evidence for this theory than many other theories. The thing about the hull crashing is the iceberg weighed a lot more than the ship, so that theory could have been false. We just don't know yet. The theory, though, doesn't fully line up. The theory might have some strong evidence, not all of it lines up. The portholes were added to both ships later, which means there was this thing that there were two more portholes on there than they were before. The reason for this was that they added portholes when both ships, on all three ships actually, for some reason we don't know why. This debunks the biggest argument that most people make for the Switch. Also, the Titanic was only cleared for 5 million when the ship would have cost 7.5 million to make. They would have lost money if they followed the map made by the conspiracy theorists. They would have never done that because they were already having financial struggles, and they didn't need more. Very honestly, the Titanic also had some specific rooms that the Olympic didn't have, and given the time frame, would have been impossible to build. The Olympic also had steel plates in the engine rooms that the Titanic didn't have. The Titanic had a few dining rooms that the Olympic was never built with. These dining rooms were more lavish than the Olympic. The time frame to make these wouldn't have happened just because when the when the Olympic crashed, the Titanic was about to be finished, which means they wouldn't have been able to make those rooms. Also, where would they get space to make the rooms? So that's where the theory doesn't line up. Also, there were steel plates put in the Olympics um, engine room for some reason. I don't know why. But when they checked the Titanic for that, the steel plates weren't there, which means that why would they take off steel plates? That's what I'm saying. If they were gonna switch the ship, there was no point to take off steel plates. So the conclusion for this theory is that while there's a lot of evidence for this theory, by a lot I mean only a little, but since it's a conspiracy theory, a little is a lot. There's a lot more evidence against it, and it would be impossible to switch a badly damaged ship to as a brand new one. I think this theory is debunked. The reason why is because there's a ship, it crashed into a ship. You can't mistake it for a new ship. It just wouldn't be possible, say many people, honestly, a lot of people. Now, look closer at this image. If you do, you'll see that this is the Olympic. Olympic. As you can see, the entire deck has bigger when there was no windows. It was not enclosed. This, as you can see, it is enclosed. Look at this. That's not enclosed, right? That's not enclosed. So, see, it's not enclosed there. This is the Olympic, by the way. Now, this is a Titanic leaving. I know the clarity is not that good, but if you can see, just very, like, it's very faint. But you can see that their lines, they're not enclosed over here, which means that, the ships would have never been switched. This is the Olympic. And as you can see, they're like the portholes we were talking about, how they're even. If you see from this picture, they're grouped together just like they were on this. They are grouped together too. And from a distance, you might say, oh, well, yeah, these look pretty even, but that's from a distance. From close, I think it will look the same as here. So I don't think this theory is true. While it has a lot of evidence, I think this theory is debunked.